Hello, everyone. This is Cody Lee of BlackCatBooks.org, author of I, the Dragon, Cruel and Beautiful, Rabbit Hole, King Dia, Lauren Frey, and the upcoming Jaw of the Dragon. So, with the announcement of Splatoon 3 launching this September 9th, 2022, there has been a lot of backlash from Pretendos regarding the title. In fact, the most backlash I think I've seen from any Nintendo title since like ARMS. That might not be the exact the exact case, because I haven't been paying that much attention to this stuff over the past couple of years, but it is very, very noticeable in that there is a significant portion of people who believe incorrectly that Splatoon 3 does not need to exist and they could just release the game as like a free patch for Splatoon 2 and like nothing would change. Which is obviously wrong if you've actually played Splatoon 2 and can see all the changes they've made with Splatoon 3, with like the new weapons, the new stage designs, new features, and new mechanics. Like, they're very, very obvious if you've like actually played a Splatoon game before, that they have adjusted the way the game works, and it's beyond that of a simple patch. Like, it is a completely new game. Just like, mind you, how Splatoon 2 was a completely new game from Splatoon 1. Those of you who have been following my content for a long time may recall that people like Emily Rogers, like Liam Robinson back in the day, back in the NeoGAF days, would tried and very hard to convince you that like Splatoon 2 was not a real thing, that it was simply a port of the original game, and that like it had nothing new going for it. Because it looked the same, but what we ended up doing was a completely new experience with a new story, new levels, new general design, like crisper visuals, like a very noticeable upgrade. And then we eventually got Octopass, and it kind of established itself as one of the best games on Switch. Like, I love Splatoon 2. And with Splatoon 3, it seems to be like the situation is repeating itself all over again, in which people who have no idea what they're talking about are trying to convince themselves that Splatoon 3 does not look much different than Splatoon 2. It is absurd to me, especially since like there's still a lot we don't know about the game. We don't know like everything about it. We don't know all the new modes. We don't know like anything about the new characters. Like, there are a lot of things that could reasonably be expected to change in this iteration. And instead of assuming that like they just haven't shown anything to us, the Pretendos have manufactured this conspiracy theory out of thin air that it doesn't change enough from Splatoon 2, even though it clearly has. It's already at this point. It's kind of befuddling to me. But what I think is happening is that Splatoon, more than any other Nintendo franchise at the moment, is very much a threat to the Western gaming industry, in the sense where like it is doing a way better job at addressing sci-fi issues like climate change and like racial issues than a lot of the woke Western parties. Like, Splatoon handles this kind of subject matter way more naturally. They incorporate it into the world and the plot in a fun, believable way, and they don't have to like meander about it. They actually made a good game revolving around these kind of themes and ideas, and this kind of is a threat to the Western gaming industry, who kind of have promoted themselves as being like the people who will bring about like real societal change or something. Like with Splatoon being an online franchise, right? An online shooter franchise from Nintendo. If Splatoon ever reaches the level of success that like other online shooters like Call of Duty have, it's going to be over for these third-party companies. Like, if Splatoon 3 can do like 30 million units on Switch, like that'll be Call of Duty numbers. It'll become like a very real question among shareholders and investors as to why online shooters don't have more of a presence on Nintendo consoles. Why aren't you primarily developing for the Nintendo audience? Why did you ignore the very strong presence, the very strong history of first-person shooters on Nintendo hardware? Like, the best first-person shooter ever made, GoldenEye, and its spiritual sequel, Perfect Dark, in favor of pushing these platforms, the Xbox and PlayStation, that nobody wants. Like, we're reaching the point where the two genres that were basically keeping third-party consoles alive. Like online shooters and open world games are now finding a home on Nintendo platforms. And when that happens, like there really will be no reason to own a gaming platform other than like maybe for sports games. And even then you still get like releases of sports games on Switch. So like they just don't tend to have the same features and like there are like notable limitations, but like that's really something that really shouldn't happen, right? It's laughable to me how this facade has gone on so long that people have legitimately gotten the impression that Nintendo can't handle online games or can't handle open world games or can't handle like games designed for a mass market or like it's ridiculous to me how long this narrative has continued. And with Splatoon becoming as big as it is, especially in Japan, I think we're reaching the point where like something like Overwatch, which sold itself, or Fortnite, which sold itself on being colorful and different than the competition, it won't stick out. Like it'll just be seen as a cheap knockoff of the much superior Splatoon franchise, which actually evolves, actually has actually introduces new gameplay elements, and actually meaningfully grows the IP through a series of releases. Like that's never going to happen with Overwatch. That's never going to happen with Fortnite. Like Splatoon is well on its way to becoming probably in the top 5 biggest Nintendo IPs. Like I say, like Mario, Zelda, Pokemon back in the day. It's probably like now it's probably Mario, Zelda, Pokemon, Animal Crossing, and Splatoon, right? Like juggernaut, 5 juggernaut franchises that are going to appeal to all kinds of different people, pull all kinds of different people into consumers, gamers into Nintendo hardware, and with that wide of a net, catching so many different people. Like, how in the world are game companies going to justify to their shareholders that shooters don't have an audience on Nintendo hardware? Like, it's not going to be possible. And so, what I think we're seeing when it comes to the backlash towards Splatoon in particular is that the Pretendos are desperate to maintain this illusion of competition, this illusion that Nintendo is fighting a losing battle, that there's something wrong with the way they produce games and release them to their audience, that Splatoon is a game that can't compete. Like that narrative has been very prevalent since 2015. Like since the game was first unveiled, actually, right? Remember back when they tried to tell you that this was a ripoff of Wars, like an obscure like Xbox 360 like live arcade game, like shit like that, right? Clearly grasping for straws from the very beginning, and they've tried everything they can. But I think with Splatoon 3, this is going to be the moment where the franchise really establishes itself as a juggernaut. I know a lot of people who will tell you they grew up with Splatoon, who love it more than anything, who want to see it succeed. They are sick to death of their favorite franchise being written off in favor of fucking Overwatch and Fortnite. Like, it needs to stop. And my hope is that Splatoon 3 will silence the naysayers, sell like 30 million copies, and establish itself as the biggest third-person shooter franchise in the world. That's my dream for Splatoon 3. I want this to be huge.